In April 2019, the city of Las Vegas, Nevada, was shaken by a horrific case of child abuse that resulted in the death of 5-year-old Lara Davis. This heartbreaking story serves as a stark reminder of the vulnerability of children and the devastating consequences when those entrusted with their care fail to protect them. The case began on a fateful day when emergency services received a distressing 911 call about an unresponsive child. Paramedics rushed to the scene, finding young Lara Davis in critical condition. They immediately transported her to a nearby hospital, but despite the medical team's best efforts, Lara tragically passed away. As doctors examined her body, they noticed numerous bruises covering her legs, torso, and abdomen, telltale signs of abuse that would soon unravel a horrifying tale of cruelty and neglect. Law enforcement quickly focused their investigation on 28-year-old Sierra Wood, the boyfriend of Lara's mother. Wood, who had placed the 911 call, initially claimed that Lara had fallen backward and hit her head. However, as investigators dug deeper, they uncovered a disturbing pattern of abuse that painted a very different picture from Wood's explanation. Sierra Wood, it was revealed, had a background as a former football player, having briefly been in the NFL and Canadian Football League. This athletic history played a sinister role in the abuse Lara endured. Wood had been subjecting the 5-year-old girl to intense exercise routines as a form of punishment, believing she was too chunky and needed to lose weight. This twisted logic led to a regime of physical punishment that no child, let alone one so young, should ever have to endure. The details of the abuse Lara suffered are nothing short of heartbreaking. Wood forced the young girl to perform grueling workouts that would challenge even adults. These included running sprints in their apartment, doing sit-ups, and holding wall squats. These were not exercises done for health or fitness, but cruel punishments inflicted on a child barely out of toddlerhood. Wood told police that he was trying to get Lara on the right path due to her being chunky, a statement that reveals a disturbing mindset about body image and child rearing. On the day of her death, Wood had forced Lara to do sit-ups because she hadn't learned her letters and numbers to his satisfaction. It was during this exercise that Lara reportedly fell backward and hit her head. However, the subsequent medical examination would reveal that the truth was far more horrific than Wood's account suggested. When authorities responded to Wood's 911 call, they found Lara's body cold and stiff, indicating she had been deceased for some time before help was called. The autopsy revealed the true extent of the abuse Lara had suffered, and the findings were shocking. Medical examiners discovered that Lara had at least 100 bruises on her body. Even more horrifying, they found 20 broken ribs, multiple skull contusions, internal bleeding, and bruises to her heart, diaphragm, and connective tissue. Many of these injuries were new, inflicted around the time of her death. The autopsy also revealed older injuries, painting a picture of ongoing, sustained abuse that had been occurring for some time. Based on this overwhelming evidence, authorities arrested Sierra Wood for Lara's murder. However, he wasn't the only one implicated in this horrific crime. In a twist that added another layer of tragedy to the case, Lara's own mother, Amy Taylor, who was Wood's girlfriend at the time, was also arrested and charged. Initially, Taylor was charged with child abuse and neglect. Police alleged that she had contributed to the abuse of her daughter, including sitting on Lara's chest and stomach, as a form of punishment. This revelation was perhaps the most heartbreaking aspect of the case. Not only had Lara suffered at the hands of her mother's boyfriend, but her own mother had participated in the abuse. The very person who should have been Lara's protector and advocate had instead become complicit in her torment. As more details emerged about Lara's life, it became clear that her short existence had been marked by instability and fear. According to a 2019 report from local news station KSNV, Lara had split her time between her father's home in California and her mother's residence in Nevada. The move to live with Wood had only happened weeks before Lara's death. Tragic coincidence that left many wondering if things might have been different had she remained with her father. Lara's father revealed some chilling information to the media that hinted at the terror his daughter had been living with. He stated that in the months leading up to her death, Lara had shown increasing fear about returning to her mother's home in Nevada. Every time I picked her up during those last few months of her life, she was afraid to go home, told reporters. This statement suggests that there were warning signs of the abuse Lara was enduring, tragically overlooked until it was too late. It's a stark reminder of the importance of listening to children and taking their fears and concerns seriously. The legal proceedings in this case moved slowly through the system. In June 2019, 2 months after Lara's death, both Wood and Taylor were indicted on murder and felony child abuse charges. It would take 5 years before the case reached its conclusion, with both defendants eventually striking plea deals in April 2024. Sear Wood, by then 33 years old, pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and a charge of child abuse, neglect, or endangerment. However, he entered what's known as an Alford plea, maintaining his innocence while acknowledging that prosecutors had enough evidence to convict him. This legal maneuver allowed Wood to avoid admitting guilt while still accepting the consequences of a guilty plea. Amy Taylor also entered a guilty plea, admitting to charges of second-degree murder and child abuse, neglect, or endangerment, resulting in substantial bodily harm. Unlike Wood, Taylor's plea was a full admission of guilt, acknowledging her role in her daughter's death. The sentencing phase of the trial revealed even more disturbing details about the case and showcased the attempts by both Wood and Taylor to shift blame onto each other. Wood's attorney argued that his client hadn't inflicted the injuries that led to Lara's death, instead blaming Taylor for sitting on the 5-year-old's chest and holding her down. Wood claimed to have been at work when this occurred and said he didn't know what Taylor had done. His defense portrayed him as someone who had tried to provide stability for Lara and her mother, highlighting his lack of a prior criminal record. Taylor, on the other hand, pointed the finger at Wood during her sentencing. She claimed that he had been abusive toward both her and Lara. Wood countered by asserting that Taylor was the abuser and that he had failed to protect the young girl. This back and forth of accusations painted a picture of a toxic household where Lara had no true advocate or protector. District Judge Jacqueline Bluth presided over the case, expressed skepticism about Wood's claims of passivity. She noted that Wood's family had described him in letters to the court as having a strong personality and a willingness to fight for what he believed in. The judge found it hard to reconcile this characterization with Wood's assertion that he had stood by while Lara was basically being beaten to death. In a damning move, Judge Bluth read aloud text messages exchanged between Taylor and Wood, which referred to young Lara using profanity and discussed not wanting to send her to school with visible bruises. These messages painted a horrifying picture of both defendants' attitudes toward the child in their care, revealing a callousness that shocked those present in the courtroom. In his statement to the court, Wood claimed to take responsibility for his actions, saying his messages were unacceptable, that he hadn't meant them literally. Judge Bluth was unswayed by this explanation, telling Wood that he should be grateful to his attorney for the plea deal. She stated that if a jury had seen the text messages and photos she had reviewed, Wood would likely be facing life in prison without the possibility of parole. After considering all the evidence and arguments, Judge Bluth handed down her sentence. Sear Wood was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 10 years for the murder charge. He received an additional consecutive sentence of 28 to 72 months for the child abuse charge. This means that Wood must serve at least 10 years before being eligible for parole on the murder charge, and then begin serving time for the abuse charge. Amy Taylor received a similar sentence for her role in her daughter's death. She was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 10 years for the murder charge, plus an additional 8 to 20 years for the abuse charge. The judge also ordered Wood to pay for Lara's funeral expenses, a small measure of justice for the young life he had taken. The sentencing of Wood and Taylor brings a legal conclusion to this tragic case, but the impact of Lara's death continues to reverberate. Her father, who had seen signs of his daughter's fear but was unable to prevent her death, gave a heartbreaking victim impact statement to court. He revealed that in their last conversation, just 2 days before her death, Lara had told him that Wood had threatened to beat her if she said anything about the abuse. This final conversation between father and daughter adds another layer of tragedy to the case, highlighting the terror Lara lived with in her final days. In the end, while justice has been served in the legal sense, no punishment can truly compensate for the loss of a young life. Lara Davis's story serves as a tragic reminder of the responsibility we all share in protecting the most vulnerable members of our society. It is a call to action for communities to be more vigilant, for systems to be more responsive, and for society as a whole, prioritize the safety and well-being of children. Only then can we hope to honor Lara's memory and ensure that her tragic death was not in vain.